Truistery Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
Truistery Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. Noelle Hawthorne was not the kind of woman who waited for life to happen. At 20 years old, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that belied her age, bright hazel eyes that seemed to take in every detail, a ready smile framed by a smattering of freckles, and a gentle determination that led her to volunteer for causes most of her college friends never even contemplated. Growing up in Boulder, Colorado, Noelle had been surrounded by the rugged beauty of the Rockies, where snow-capped peaks rose like silent sentinels and wide expanses of sky made every sunrise feel like a promise. Her parents, both school teachers, encouraged her curiosity. They taught her to read the stars, to identify wildflowers, and to never back down when something didn't feel right. From an early age, Noelle had a voice for justice. She founded her high school's environmental club, championing river cleanups and petitions against urban sprawl. By the time she arrived at Colorado State University, she'd amassed a loyal following of classmates eager to make a difference. Yet despite her activism, Noelle never came across as preachy or self-righteous. She was the friend who wrapped up a pizza box so the slice you couldn't finish wouldn't go to waste, the classmate who tutored struggling freshmen in organic chemistry, the neighbor who shoveled elderly Mr. Alvarez's driveway after a heavy snow. In a town that valued both intellect and heart, Noelle embodied both. But it wasn't until the spring of her junior year that her life took a turn she hadn't planned. In partnership with a small Colorado nonprofit called Bridges to Tomorrow, Noelle signed up to join a Build and Teach program in the rural San Luis Valley. The mission: to construct a one-room schoolhouse for children in a hamlet so remote that, until recently, their only option was a 2-hour bus ride over dusty backroads. Over the course of 6 weeks, Noelle and a rotating team of student volunteers from universities across the state gathered in the valley's sun-baked expanse, trading comfort for purpose. One crisp morning, as the sun broke over the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, Noelle arrived at the work site to find a tall figure already at the framing station. He was effortlessly balancing a 2x4 on his shoulder, exposing a strong, athletic build that hinted at late nights in the university climbing gym or weekend mountain treks. His dark hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, and his eyes, sharp, oceanic blue, were fixed on the beams he was aligning. He introduced himself with a half-smile. "I'm Declan Mercer, engineer voucher, overqualified and underpaid," he quipped, then offered her a hand up onto the platform. From their first exchange, Noelle felt a spark, a meeting of driven minds who spoke the same language of service. Declan, 24, was a graduate student in civil engineering at the University of Denver. He'd chosen the San Luis Valley Project to apply road-building techniques to foundations, believing that every structure needed a rock-solid start, just like every relationship. Where Noelle was compassionate and community-driven, Declan was analytical and solution-oriented. And together they tackled each day's challenges with a seamless teamwork that felt almost magical. By midday, Noelle watched as Declan crouched in the dusty ground, mapping out the drip edge for the future roofline. Sweat beaded at his temple, but he paused long enough to look up and ask, "How's your first day on the hammer?" His tone was teasing, but there was genuine concern there, too. Noelle laughed and replied, "My wrists are already protesting, but I'm surviving." He offered her a water bottle, another small kindness that she tucked into her memory. Their days together were filled with more than just labor. On breaks, they discussed Noelle's dream of opening an eco-friendly cafe in Boulder and Declan's goal to lead sustainable infrastructure projects in underserved regions. They joked about who could carve the straightest line with a level and debated whether the valley's desert cold at night was worse than Boulder's mountain chill. As the sun dipped low, they grew shells of clay on their hands and shared stories by lantern light, Declan talking about his Irish grandfather who built stone walls back home, and Noelle recalling childhood summers spent floating on Lake Dillon. Despite the blistering sun and the days that left them both sore, the work hammered an unspoken bond. By the third week, villagers had already begun calling them the Dream Team, marveling at how the two students seemed to anticipate each other's next move. With each plank they nailed, and each board they leveled, Noelle felt her heart weld itself to this kind, earnest young engineer. When the final triangular gable was set in place, marking the completion of the school's roof, the team held a ribbon-cutting ceremony. Local children in hand-woven dresses performed a traditional dance, and townspeople gathered with baskets of fresh tortillas and roasted chiles to celebrate. Noelle stood beside Declan, sharing a surge of pride that stoked her emotions. In a quiet moment, as cheers echoed around them, he took her hand and said, "Noelle, working with you feels like building the best thing I've ever known." She felt her breath catch and replied simply, "I feel the same." That summer, as Noelle returned to Boulder and Declan to Denver, they didn't let distance dampen their connection. Late-night phone calls stretched past midnight. Weekend road trips found them camping beneath the Milky Way, and every text ended with "wish you were here," whether here meant a mountain summit, a riverside picnic, or a rented apartment cluttered with moving boxes. By the time leaves began to turn gold, Declan had asked Noelle to move to Los Angeles with him. It was where a major infrastructure firm had offered him a position to manage highway expansions, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. For Noelle, the decision wasn't easy. Boulder was home. Her family, her friends, the trails she hiked, the local bakery that knew her order by heart. But the flame between her and Declan burned too brightly to ignore. She saw in him not just a partner, but a fellow architect of dreams. So, with a mixture of excitement and bittersweet nostalgia, she sold her beloved Jeep, packed her art supplies and heirloom quilts, and boarded a one-way flight to LA, choosing love and adventure over the comfort of the familiar. Their wedding took place on a clear autumn afternoon in Griffith Park, beneath a stand of golden eucalyptus. Noelle wore a simple vintage lace dress borrowed from her aunt. Declan wore a navy suit and a grin that stretched from ear to ear. Close friends and family cheered as they exchanged vows beside a wooden arch decorated with burgundy dahlias and rosemary sprigs, symbols of remembrance and love. Noelle's father wiped away a tear. Declan's mother embraced her new daughter-in-law as if she'd been part of the family for decades. As dusk fell, guests danced under strings of fairy lights, savoring mini tres leches cakes and champagne. Noelle slipped away at one point to stand at the edge of the lawn, gazing out over the twinkling city below. Declan joined her, slipping his arm around her waist. "We've built something incredible," he murmured. She leaned into him and breathed in the night air, made fragrant by nearby jasmine vines. "This is just the beginning," she whispered back. That night, as newlyweds, they began unpacking boxes in their modest LA bungalow, Declan's college books stacked on dusty shelves, Noelle's hand-painted sketchbooks on the desk. They fell asleep to the hum of freeway traffic and the promise of tomorrow, new neighborhoods to explore, new friends to meet, and eventually the pitter-patter of little feet that would turn their two-person team into a family of three. In those early days, every project felt infused with possibility. Declan reveled in executing bridge supports and highway overpasses that braided through city sprawl, while Noelle volunteered at a farm-to-table food cooperative, sharing recipes and organizing fundraisers to teach urban youth about sustainable agriculture. Together, they navigated the dizzying pace of Los Angeles life, rush hour traffic jams, endless to-do lists, and the tiny triumphs of setting up their first shared meal in a kitchen that echoed with laughter. Looking back, Noelle would later say that those opening chapters of her life with Declan felt like a handcrafted mosaic. Each piece, a volunteer project in Colorado, a midnight phone call, a winter weekend in Joshua Tree, shimmered with its own color, yet when joined, created a breathtaking whole. They were a testament to two young people daring to believe that love and purpose could be built side by side, plank by plank, under the wide expanse of the American sky. And so begins their story. Two idealists bound by a shared passion to make the world better, to cherish one another fiercely, and to face every sunrise together, no matter what challenges waited just beyond the horizon. When Noelle Hawthorne saw the two pink lines on the small plastic stick, she felt as though the world had shifted beneath her feet, in the best possible way. She had just blown into the little straw tip during a quiet Saturday morning at home in Los Angeles. The spring sunlight slanting through their kitchen window and illuminating the tiny pattern of pothose, leaves trailing down the wall. At first, of course, she couldn't believe it. Her heart fluttered so fast, she thought she might faint. For 21-year-old Noelle and 25-year-old Declan Mercer, this was everything they had dreamed of. The promise of a family of their own after months of hope, apprehension, and whispered late-night conversations about timing and readiness. Declan was still in Denver when she discovered the positive result. He'd flown back to oversee a sudden project expansion on I-25, and Noelle spent the following 45 minutes tiptoeing around the bungalow, giggling with astonishment every time she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. She snapped a photo of the test and texted Declan immediately. "Guess what I just found?" His reply came back within seconds. "Noelle, don't tell me." The phone buzzed again. "We did it. We're going to be parents." Over the next few days, Los Angeles began to feel new. Every cafe latte tasted sweeter knowing she carried new life. Her fingers paused on the steering wheel whenever she drove past the sunlit playground at Echo Park, imagining the patter of little feet chasing bubbles under the jacaranda trees. She found herself tracing her hand around her lower belly, barely registering the slight morning queasiness as a small price to pay. On Declan's next layover in LA, they met at Griffith Observatory one evening. Noelle wore a soft pink sweater that matched the rose-tinted sky at sunset. Declan carried a small, neatly wrapped box that felt unexpectedly heavy. As they stood on the terrace overlooking the city lights, he handed it to her. Inside lay a silver locket engraved with interlocking initials and Red Heart D, and a tiny ultrasound photo printed on a satin ribbon. Tears brimmed in Noelle's eyes. "You're going to be the best dad," she whispered. He wrapped her in a fierce hug, and for a moment, all the noise of the city below, traffic, sirens, distant laughter, faded until it was just the two of them, anchored together beneath a blanket of stars. Yet, as thrilling as early pregnancy had been, the reality of Declan's work began to loom larger. His projects in Texas and Arizona had always been part of his career plan, and part of their agreement that he would not turn down meaningful opportunities, but Noelle found herself counting the days between his good morning FaceTime calls. She worried over booking her prenatal appointments late enough in the afternoon so she could finish work at the Coop Cafe near Silver Lake, then slip across town in time. She missed his steady presence, the way he'd cradle her elbow on long walks, share strawberry smoothies, and read her old poetry books aloud on lazy Sundays. By 12 weeks, when the doctor confirmed a tiny heartbeat flickering on the ultrasound screen, Noelle felt equal parts elation and guilt. She kept that grainy black and white image pinned to their fridge at home, a talisman against loneliness. She set her alarm early to enhance the view of the city sunrise, imagining him beside her as he had been the night she first saw those lines. But when Declan's address popped up on her phone, Houston landed. Her stomach clenched. She spent the next 2 hours alone at the cafe, pouring her trembling hands into latte art hearts for strangers while longing for the comfort of his arms. In the early days, they tried to bridge the miles, daily video chats, late-night playlists shared on Spotify, and letters sent via the old-fashioned mail, handwritten notes scented with her lavender sleep spray, which Declan said made him feel as if she were tucked into the room with him. They joked about the absurdity of mailing ordinary envelopes when they could simply text. But they found romance in the ritual of letter writing, the anticipation of discovering her neat cursive on the doorstep, the joy of reading his pen-scrawled affirmations while gazing at the moonlit Houston skyline beyond his window. Yet beneath the sweetness, worry grew. During her second trimester, Noelle felt the first fluttering of movement, tiny kicks and rolls that tethered her to the living being inside her. She rushed to film them on her phone so Declan could witness the miracle the next time they spoke. But sometimes, she longed so fiercely to hold his hand through that moment that the distance felt like a chasm. In LA, friends cooed over her bridesmaid dress now snug across her bump. At family dinners in Boulder, her mother fussed over green smoothie recipes and reminded her to rest her feet. But in those circles, no one could replace the steady presence of the man who had promised to be her partner through every step of pregnancy. Professional life added its own complications. Noelle's volunteers at the food cooperative adored her energy, her inventive farm-fresh tartlets, and her fundraising ideas that infused community gardens into underutilized lots. She spearheaded a monthly Baby's First Bite workshop, teaching new parents how to introduce seasonal produce to tiny pallets. Yet every time she measured out pureed apples or blanched peas for those gatherings, her heart lurched with regret that Declan couldn't be there beside her, smiling as she coaxed a 6-month-old to taste a spinach puree. Instead, he was juggling supply trucks and soil tests in a dusty suburban expanse outside Phoenix. One gray Tuesday in mid-November, Noelle found herself in the waiting room of her OB-GYN, an old brick building in Silver Lake. She placed her hand gently on her round belly and waited. The door opened, and the nurse called her name. As she climbed onto the exam table, her eyes darted to a framed photo of an older pregnant couple on the wall, vibrant and hopeful, before focusing on the sonogram screen. The doctor's face was bright. "Everything looks perfect, Noelle. Your blood work is excellent, and baby's growth is right on schedule." Relief washed over her, followed by a wave of unexpected anguish. She reached for her phone, wanting Declan's voice. She opened their chat window, but hesitated. He wouldn't be available for another few hours. After the appointment, wrapped in her oversized coat, Noelle slumped into her battered Honda Civic and drove to her favorite taco stand. She ordered 2 fish tacos, one for herself, and one she would deliver home to Declan's empty chair at the kitchen table. As she waited, she scrolled through their old photo library. Selfies at Joshua Tree, snapshots of each other's faces in roadside motels, pictures of their hands cradling coffee mugs on cold mornings. Tears sprang unbidden. The realization sank in. The life she envisioned, a constant, shared adventure, was now halved, the distances inscribed in airline miles and time zones. In the weeks that followed, Noelle clung to routines. She joined a prenatal yoga class in Echo Park, where the instructor guided them through gentle stretches and breathing exercises. Each time she exhaled, she imagined sending her love to Declan across the emptiness. She bookmarked articles on partners' roles in pregnancy, hoping to find creative ways to include him remotely, like reading poetry on video or compiling a playlist of lullabies for their unborn child. But many nights, after a long day of kneading dough and organizing produce stalls, she lay awake listening to ambulances wail in the distance, aching for the solidity of his arms around her. When the holidays approached, things grew more complex. Declan pleaded to change his work schedule so he could fly home for Christmas Eve. Noelle and her parents rearranged flights, sent boxes of homemade chili spices and pecan pie to his Houston apartment, and wrapped matching winter scarves for their first Christmas as expectant parents. That evening, when Declan staggered in at 3 a.m. LA time, jet-lagged but triumphant, Noelle met him at the front door, embroidered stocking in one hand, scarf in the other. She pulled him into a fierce embrace, feeling the relief of having him home. "I missed you," she murmured into his shoulder. He kissed the top of her head. "I missed you more." For a few precious days, they were a family in 3. Noelle, Declan, and the tiny one they called Bean in her belly. They decorated their living room with twinkling lights, baked gingerbread men shaped like little footprints, and binge-watched old holiday movies wrapped in fuzzy blankets. But even the novelty of holiday magic couldn't erase the ticking clock of Declan's return to his projects. On December 28th, he kissed Noelle goodbye in the early morning light, promising to be back before the new year. only to have an urgent staffing crisis push him right back onto a plane bound for Austin. Noelle watched the gate from her lift's tinted windows, clutching his winter scarf, as he disappeared into the terminal. She pressed her palm against her belly and whispered, "Stay safe for us." Then she climbed back into the car and tried not to think about the miles stretching between them. In January, snow dusted the Hollywood Hills. Noelle felt tiny hiccups from within whenever she walked up their front steps, a delicate reminder that none of this distance mattered to the life growing inside her. She learned to find joy in small moments, the surprise of a midday kick, a friend's impromptu visit bearing a houseplant for the nursery, the smell of fresh paint in the baby's room. Yet beneath it all, the ache of Declan's absence persisted. One especially cold evening, she sat at their kitchen counter, flipping through a parenting book she'd borrowed from the library. Your Baby Month by Month. She read aloud about bonding activities during the third trimester, painting toes with non-toxic nail polish, singing lullabies, reading stories. She paused the audiobook version of Love You Forever, just as her voice wobbled. Then, despite the mile-wide gulf between them, she recorded herself on video reading the story, ending each page with, "I love you more than you'll ever know." She sent the clip to Declan with a text, "For when Bean wants to hear our voices together." 20 minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Best bedtime story I've ever heard," he wrote. "I can't wait for our little one to meet you both." Noelle tapped her forehead with a smile, imagining them both in the same room, a family not defined by distance or timetables, but by shared love and unwavering commitment. That night, she drifted to sleep listening to an old voicemail he'd left weeks ago, his voice low and steady. "You carry my heart with you every second, Noelle. Be gentle with yourself. I'll come back as soon as I can." As the needle scratched across the voicemail timeline, Noelle realized that motherhood was not just a joyous threshold, it was also a journey demanding resilience, patience, and the kind of faith that could span time zones. By week 20, as the baby's first kicks turned into somersaults, Noelle felt a new confidence taking root. She was no longer simply an expectant mother alone in Los Angeles. She was the anchor for their three-person team, capable of weathering the loneliness and forging ahead. When Declan finally returned in early February, he stepped off the plane into her arms, breathless with apology and relief. Noelle pulled him close, letting his familiar scent ground her. "Welcome home," she whispered, laying her hand on her belly so they could both feel the fluttering dance of their child. In the glow of their reunion, they realized that this chapter, the one marked by both exhilarating joy and agonizing separation, had only strengthened their bond. They had learned to nurture hope in small spaces. The hush of a morning phone call, the intimacy of a shared playlist, the promise of a return flight. And as they navigated the final months of pregnancy, they did so with the quiet certainty that distance could never diminish the love they held for the family they were building, one heartbeat at a time. Noelle had always trusted Declan without hesitation. From the moment they met in the sunlit expanse of the San Luis Valley, his integrity and kindness had felt like the bedrock on which their relationship was built. Yet when the soft vibration of his phone woke her in the middle of the night, she felt a flicker of unease she could not immediately name. He'd been away for 3 weeks, managing a rush project in Houston. Their daily video calls were a lifeline, until the one at 2:17 a.m., when she noticed his screen light up with an incoming text displaying just the words, "Miss you already." She blinked at the glow. Declan was a considerate partner. He wouldn't be messaging anyone casually at such an hour. Torn between suspicion and guilt, Noelle resisted the impulse to rifle through his phone in that moment. She reminded herself that trust meant waiting for explanations. Nevertheless, the line of code on his lock screen, "Miss you already," lodged itself in her mind like a splinter. The next morning, Noelle found herself distracted at brunch with friends at a cozy cafe near Silver Lake. She absent-mindedly replayed the late-night notification. Who could possibly send such a message? Declan had always been faithful, but the world of social media was vast and unpredictable. On a whim, she downloaded Instagram on her phone and typed Declan's handle into the search bar. Scrolling through his public profile, Noelle saw countless photos of construction sites and project notes, but near the bottom of the feed, she noticed a portrait shot Declan had taken of the Houston skyline at dusk. Beneath it, she saw a series of likes from @ScarlettEvers, an account she didn't recognize. Hesitation knotted her stomach. Why would someone she didn't know be so attentive to Declan's posts? Curiosity overcame restraint. She tapped on the profile. The bio read simply, Urban Explorer, Art Lover, Resident of Houston, Flourishing with Coffee and Code. There was a single highlight reel of cityscapes and occasional coffee shop snaps and exactly 3 posts, each of them hearts on Declan's photos. Noelle scrolled through her own interactions only to find that she, as at @n_Hawthorne, had never received a reciprocal like. She took a breath. Maybe Scarlett was a colleague who simply admired Declan's photography. Deciding to give the benefit of the doubt, Noelle put her phone away. But that evening, her resolve weakened. Over dinner, she casually mentioned, Declan, I saw that someone named Scarlett liked your Houston shot. Do you know her? Declan paused mid, forkful of pasta, his eyes flicking toward Noelle's face. He set his fork down slowly. Scarlett? Oh, yeah, she's on my project team. She's the new data analyst. Kind of a silent type. She must have really liked that building angle. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'll say hi tomorrow. Noelle nodded, though something in her chest tightened. A data analyst who really liked that building angle didn't explain why the profile picture featured a bright red lipstick, smudged selfie that illuminated soft curves and carefully tousled hair. She reminded herself that Los Angeles and Houston operated on different social codes. It wasn't her place to judge her husband's colleagues by their photographs. Still, the next day brought more unease. While Declan was on a video call with the project manager, his phone buzzed with a secondary notification, a DM from @ScarlettEvers reading, Hope you made it home safe. Can't wait to see your Seattle photos. Noelle's stomach lurched. Seattle? Why would Declan be sending photos of Seattle, a conference he hadn't mentioned? And why did Scarlett care? That evening, no explanations soothed her anxiety. She closed her eyes, replaying every digital footprint she'd overlooked, the filtered selfies on Scarlett's Instagram, the insistent double taps on Declan's work snapshots, and the mysterious text in the early hours. She wondered if her jealousy was unwarranted, but she could not shake the suspicion. Determined to find clarity, Noelle researched workplace social media etiquette, only to find she had crossed the line into territory she barely recognized, public-facing accounts. Professional boundaries blurred with personal interests. She wrestled with guilt. Had she invaded Declan's privacy? Or was she protecting her family from a betrayal she feared was brewing? Late one night, Noelle gathered the courage to access Declan's Facebook account on her laptop. He often left it logged in on her desktop. She scanned his friend list, looking for Scarlett. Instead, she found Morgan Vale, a friend whose profile photo was a close-up of a woman's lips whispered against glass. Noelle clicked the Messages tab and typed M into the search field. The screen populated with an exchange from the previous week. Morgan had sent Declan a text reading, Just landed in Seattle. Wish you were here. Noelle's breath caught. She'd heard the word Seattle before, when Scarlett had mentioned it in her DM. She traced the thread, scrolling up until she found charged messages, declarations of missing each other, plans for clandestine coffee dates, and a line that undid her entirely. I can't help how I feel. Tears welled at the corners of her eyes. Her heartbeat pounded like a drum. Memories of Declan's embrace on hospital footsteps, the vow they spoke under a eucalyptus arch, suddenly it all felt fragile, threatened by this digital subterfuge. She closed the laptop softly, as if it would shatter beneath her hands. In the quiet that followed, Noelle felt a cold resolve bloom. She refused to confront him in anger, not yet. Instead, she would gather incontrovertible proof, piece together every interaction, so that when the day came to speak, she would stand on solid ground rather than trembling suspicion. For hours, she returned to that chat thread, scrolling, reading, screenshotting snippets. She copied each timestamp, every emoticon, every ellipsis that hinted at something left unsaid. Can't wait. Miss you more. Safe flight. By dawn. Her eyelids drooped with exhaustion, and the sun had already begun its pink ascent over the hills. She sat at the kitchen table with journal and pen, categorizing every clue. Mysterious text at 2:17 a.m. Miss you already. Instagram likes from @ScarlettEvers on every photo over a week. DM from Scarlett. Hope you made it home safe. Can't wait to see your Seattle photos. Facebook messages from Morgan Vale, same person as Scarlett, expressing longing and excitement for private meetups. Her hand shook as she wrote. She realized that Da Vinci's greatest masterpieces once started with rough sketches. Her list was the sketch of a heartbreaking truth. That afternoon, Noelle rehearsed conversations in the mirror. I need to understand what's happening. Please show me your phone. I deserve the truth. She refused to let raw emotion guide her. She owed it to herself and to their unborn child to act with clarity. Still, beneath her resolve, her heart ached. She replayed their wedding vows. When he'd promised to stand by her in sickness and in health, in joy and in sorrow, from this day forward. She wondered how easily those words could unravel in an instant, slip through the cracks of an Instagram like or a private message. By evening, Noelle powered down her laptop and placed it in a drawer. She knew what came next. That fateful conversation in which she would confront Declan with the evidence. Yet as she crawled into bed, her silhouette soft against the pale mattress, she realized that even in this moment of betrayal, she held something deeper. The right to her own peace of mind. And the courage to face whatever truths might come. Tomorrow, she told herself, she would ask him to sit down with her. But tonight, she would let the world go quiet. And allow herself the ache of hurt, because sometimes the first step toward earning back trust is acknowledging that it has been broken. And so, in the hush before sleep, Noelle resolved. She would meet the dawn unflinching, with her evidence at her side, ready to demand answers, ready to choose her path forward, one way or another. In the days following her discovery of those clandestine messages, Noelle Hawthorne found herself navigating a delicate balance between outward composure and inward storm. Each morning she donned her routine, pumpkin spice latte in hand, prenatal yoga class, cheerful waves to neighbors as she jogged around Silver Lake. But beneath the surface, she was assembling an intricate mosaic of evidence. She had resolved not to let raw emotion drive her next move. Instead, she would gather certainty, one data point at a time, until she could look Declan in the eye and demand truth. Noelle began with his devices. Ever mindful of the boundaries of trust, she refused to rifle through Declan's phone without cause. Instead, she created a spreadsheet on her laptop labeled Timeline, with columns for date, time, sender, recipient, content, and source. Each row she filled, a screenshot of Morgan Vale's midnight DM, an Instagram screenshot of Scarlett Evers' double taps, a newspaper article about that Seattle conference, added weight to her growing case. She color-coded entries. Red for the most suspicious, amber for needs follow-up, and green for innocuous but checked. By midweek, she had discovered that Scarlett and Morgan were indeed the same person, confirmed by a distinctive profile photo embedded in each account's metadata. Noelle recorded the numeric IDs, noting how the accounts alternated between public and private settings, presumably to hide tracks. It took only a few minutes of online sleuthing to locate a cached copy of Morgan Vale's personal blog, an afterthought in her digital footprint, where she wrote about unexpected connections made on long, lonely business trips. Noelle saved the blog post as a PDF, the timestamp at the top a prize, November 2nd, 11:47 p.m., the same night Declan had received that "Miss you already" text. Branching out beyond his devices, Noelle next retraced his business travel schedule. Declan's company sent out flight itineraries via email. She knew he used a shared calendar for project deadlines, which he sometimes forgot to clear. She reconstructed his November and December trips on a map. Houston headquarters, a red, Seattle Architecture Summit, a blue. A surprise overnight in Phoenix, an oranged. Overlaying the messages from Morgan Vale's side. Wish you were here near Seattle. Counting days near Phoenix. Noelle saw a pattern emerge. Every time Declan was away more than 48 hours, contact from Morgan spiked. To corroborate this, she enlisted an ally, Mara Ortiz, Declan's longtime friend from grad school who now lived in Denver. Mara was discreet, fiercely loyal, and adept with spreadsheets of her own. Using a group chat labeled Data Ops Dream Team, Noelle privately messaged Mara, explaining only that she needed to verify some odd Instagram interactions on Declan's account. Within 24 hours, Mara forwarded CSV exports of Declan's Instagram likes history, revealing that the mysterious account Scarlett Evers had indeed engaged with every photo he posted between November 8th and December 15th, a stretch of 5 weeks. Noelle gently thanked Mara, her relief tempered by the confirmation. With digital evidence firming up, Noelle turned to physical investigation. She started small, dropping by the upscale cafe downtown where Declan often met clients. She positioned herself at an outdoor table with her laptop open, ostensibly working on a baby name list, but really watching for a familiar dark-haired silhouette. On her third visit, at 2:30 p.m., she noticed Declan walking in beside a woman whose red hair flowed over a camel wool coat, Morgan Vale. They exchanged soft words, heads bent close, and sat in a corner booth. Noelle snapped a discreet photo with her phone, the image grainy but unmistakable. Declan's hand resting palm up on the tabletop, Morgan's hand fluttering above it. Instead of confronting them, Noelle slipped away to process the sighting. She labeled the photo, 2:30 p.m., December 12th, Cafe A, DTLA, and added it to her spreadsheet. She texted Mara, confirmation, saw them together. Mara replied, ouch. I'm so sorry. You deserve honesty, Noelle. In the same group chat, Mara gently reminded Noelle to care for herself, suggesting they meet for a mani-pedi later that week. As the days wore on, Noelle felt the toll of sleepless nights. Her ever-expanding binder of printouts, photos, and sticky note reminders consumed her kitchen table, but she refused to let it derail her life. Each evening she unwound with guided meditation, focusing on her breath as if she could inhale calm and exhale doubt. She practiced prenatal yoga's restorative poses, reminding herself that strength lay not in confrontation, but in measured confidence. Professional life offered a brief respite. At the Farm-to-Table Cooperative, Noelle orchestrated a new Baby Steps program, teaching urban parents to prepare fresh, healthy meals for toddlers. Seeing families bond over shared meals inspired her. Perhaps someday she would lead cooking classes for her own child. In those hours, she was a passionate mentor, breathing life into dough and seedlings, pushing the investigation into the background, until the moment she logged onto her laptop again. She contacted a private investigator through an online referral, Silas Reed, known for discreet surveillance work. In their initial phone consultation, Noelle spoke evenly. I suspect infidelity and need a simple stakeout, discreet photos, verified dates, no drama. She quoted the cafe meeting and the travel/messages pattern. Silas, his voice gravelly and calm, assured her he'd assign an operative to monitor Declan's next business trip to Seattle. He required her timeline, the Instagram handle, and a single, clear headshot of Declan for his files. Noelle sent a cropped image from his LinkedIn profile. Silas promised updates by end of week. Meanwhile, Noelle's digital spreadsheet evolved into a professional-looking report. She created a cover page titled October-December 2024, Interactions and Travel Correlation, complete with a bar graph illustrating message volume by date and a map with pin locations and photos. At the bottom of each section, she wrote brief summaries, high-frequency contact during Seattle trip, confirmed cafe meeting in LA, etc. The process, once fueled by hurt, now felt strangely empowering. She was gathering incontrovertible proof, not just to accuse, but to free herself from uncertainty. On December 18th, A PDF arrived in her inbox from Silas Reed Investigations. Stakeout Report, Seattle Conference. Noelle opened it with trembling fingers. The first page detailed the dates, December 5th through 7, the locations, the Edgewater Hotel lobby, Breakwater Cafe, and a private suite at the conference center. There were 3 clear photos of Declan and Morgan Vale walking together into a private room emblazoned, reserved for senior staff. The operative's notes included snippets of conversation overheard. Morgan asking, "Will you call me tonight?" and Declan responding, "I'll be back by midnight." The report concluded, behavior inconsistent with professional boundaries. Photos and audio clips enclosed. Noelle stared at the screen, her pulse echoing in her ears. She clicked to play one of the audio snippets. 2 muffled voices, feminine laughter. Then Declan's tone low and intimate. "I can't wait to see you again." She pressed pause, her vision blurred. This was more than suspicion. It was undeniable proof. That night, she locked her laptop and placed the printout on the kitchen counter. She skipped dinner, tracing her hands along the edges of the report. The binder's spine creaked as she closed it, and she felt a tapped release of tension, as if she had exorcised the phantom of doubt. She had everything she needed: screenshots, witness photos, travel logs, private messages, surveillance evidence. The narrative was unassailable. Yet despite the magnitude of the evidence, Noelle knew it was not time to confront. She was determined to choose her next steps deliberately. Should she demand an explanation? File for legal separation? Or perhaps secure her and her child's future financially before any emotionally charged meeting? She drafted a new to-do list under the heading Next Steps. 1. Consult a family attorney. 2. Review joint accounts. 3. Gather personal items, keepsakes. 4. Schedule confrontation. Each bullet was a calculated move toward clarity and freedom. In the days that followed, she carried her composure like armor. She greeted Declan's return from Phoenix with small smiles, celebrated his homecoming with a welcome meal, and watched their unborn child kick in sync with his laughter. But no one could see the binder tucked in her bedroom closet, ready for when she would need it. On New Year's Eve, as LA fireworks splashed color across the sky, Noelle stood with Declan on their balcony, champagne flutes in hand. He pulled her close, whispering dreams of kindergarten drop-off and family vacations. She kissed him softly, her mind racing. New year, new decisions. She would give him chances to explain, but she held the power now. She knew the truth. When the clock struck midnight, Noelle felt the weight of the past weeks lift slightly, like the final chord of a symphony easing into silence. She raised her glass to the future, to herself, to their child, and to the clarity she had carved out amidst the heartbreak. In that moment, she understood that love need not be blind. It could be vigilant, courageous, and ultimately liberating. And so, armed with her binder of evidence and her unshakable resolve, Noelle prepared for the chapter ahead, one in which honesty, no matter how painful, would light the path to healing. By mid-January, Noelle Hawthorne had amassed every piece of evidence she needed: screenshots of private messages, surveillance photos, travel logs, and audio clips. Yet she still wrestled with the question of how to confront Declan and Morgan in a way that was both definitive and dignified. Violence was out of the question. This was not a Hollywood thriller, but real life, where reputations and futures hung in the balance. She wanted the world to see the truth, but also to respect her courage, not pity her. She settled on Redwood University's outdoor courtyard, a central plaza ringed with palm trees and red brick walkways, where students and faculty often paused between classes. It was public, busy enough to ensure witnesses, yet intimate enough that Declan and Morgan would feel the weight of every eye. Noelle reserved a small, portable projector from the campus media center under the pretense of a visual arts project, then booked a quiet spot near the Renaissance-style clock tower for 5:00 p.m. on a Friday, the end of the academic week, when traffic would peak. On the morning of the confrontation, Noelle arrived early. The sky was crisp and clear, a late winter sun casting long shadows across the courtyard. She set up the fold-out table, laptop connected to the projector, neatly framed printouts of key screenshots stacked on the side, and a bouquet of white lilies in a glass vase, her own silent reminder of grace under pressure. She pinned a simple sign to the table's front, "Truth in every frame." Around 4:30 p.m., Mara Ortiz, Declan's friend-turned-confidant, pulled up in her Volvo and helped Noelle adjust the projector's angle. Mara's presence was a comfort, a moral anchor and a witness who could later verify that Noelle had acted transparently. Noelle handed Mara a discreet USB drive containing the compiled evidence, messages, photos, audio, just in case her laptop glitched. "Thank you," Noelle whispered. Mara squeezed her hand. "You're strong enough for this. I've got your back." They waited as the courtyard filled with students streaming out of afternoon lectures. Some sat on stone benches reading, others chatted in huddles beneath the clock tower. The murmur of conversation and the distant hum of campus life created a living soundtrack. At precisely 4:59, Noelle stood and cleared her throat, tapping the microphone she'd borrowed from media services. "Hello, everyone," she called. Her voice echoed across the plaza, causing heads to turn. "Thank you for joining me on such short notice. I know you're busy, so I'll be brief but frank." A handful of curious onlookers gathered. Phones appeared, recording. Noelle flicked a switch. The projector buzzed to life, displaying her opening slide, evidence of betrayal, Declan Mercer and Morgan Vale, in crisp white text on a midnight blue background. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. She swallowed, then spoke calmly. "My name is Noelle Hawthorne. I'm here today not to shame anyone but to demand accountability. These slides represent interactions that cross the line of professional decency and the trust of marriage." A few feet away, Declan and Morgan came into view, drawn by the crowd. Declan's face paled. Morgan's jaw tightened. Noelle watched as they exchanged a rapid, whispered exchange. Then, with her image and name on the top slide, Noelle clicked to advance.
November 3, 2:17 nachts.
Screenshot. "Miss you already." Text on Declan's locked screen. "This message appeared on my husband's phone. No professional matter, no work emergency, just a personal, intimate note from Morgan's alias." She advanced again. November 10th to December 15th. Instagram activity. Graph. Daily likes by @ScarlettEvers on Declan's photos. Over 5 weeks. Morgan flooded Declan's Instagram with likes. Every single one. Genuine admiration, or deliberate pursuit. The pattern speaks for itself. A student whispered, "Wow." Another whispered, "He's in deep trouble." Noelle barely noticed. She was focused on delivering facts, not drama. December 5th to 7th, Seattle Conference. Photo collage. Declan and Morgan entering a private suite. Here, at the Edgewater Hotel, the two of them met privately, off the official conference schedule. The following audio clip captures part of that conversation. She tapped the laptop and the courtyard filled with muffled voices. Twice, male and female tones. "I missed you so much. I can't wait until tonight," then rustling. The clip ended abruptly. A hushed silence followed. Noelle continued, voice unwavering. "This is not an innocent friendship. That audio, those secret meetings. This entire timeline, they illustrate an emotional affair in progress." She watched as Declan sank back on a low wall, shock rendering him mute. Morgan's cheeks burned. She folded her arms, defiant. December 12th, 2:30 p.m., DTLA Cafe. Photo. Declan and Morgan seated in a corner booth. Despite the plausible excuses of work obligations, on that day they chose secrecy over professional transparency. Noelle paused. A ripple of hushed conversations passed through the crowd. She sensed the gravity of the moment, how every person present was internalizing the evidence. Finally, she advanced to the last slide. January 2nd, text messages, private accounts. Screenshots, Morgan's DM. "Wish you were here." Declan's reply, "Counting days." These messages represent plans and longing that should never exist between my husband and another woman. I stand here with no malice in my heart, only the need for honesty. She closed the slideshow. Noelle set aside the remote and clasped her hands. The courtyard remained silent, as if waiting for her next move. Taking a steadying breath, Noelle addressed them directly. Declan, Morgan, I've presented you with facts. I'm here to ask, why? Her voice softened, inviting honesty rather than confrontation. Why hide these interactions? Why risk my trust, our marriage, and your professional reputations? I deserve the truth. Morgan's defiance flickered as she opened her mouth, then closed it. Declan rose slowly, legs unsteady. He approached the table, gaze lowered. Noelle. His voice cracked with remorse. The students leaned in, phones raised to record every syllable. No, Noelle said, raising her hand. Let me finish. I gave you every chance, messages, phone calls, visits home. You lied to me. You lied to everyone. But you can still choose what comes next. Her tone was calm, but resolute. You can step up, take responsibility, and show genuine commitment to our family. Or you can accept the consequences of your actions. Murmurs spread. Some students nodded in sympathy. Others exchanged surprised glances. One older professor stepped forward discreetly, patting Noelle on the shoulder in solidarity. Declan swallowed hard. He looked up, eyes red. I'm sorry, he managed. I never meant to hurt you. His words trailed off as he seemed to realize the enormity of his betrayal, laid bare before a public audience. Noelle met his gaze. Sorry isn't enough. I need to know, will you end this affair? Will you prove your loyalty, or will you let this destruction continue? Her question hung in the air like a challenge. Morgan's shoulders slumped. She raised her voice, soft and shaky. Noelle, I am sorry. I didn't know he was married. I thought it was consensual, but I see now how wrong it was. She glanced at Declan, then back at Noelle, tears brimming. I will step away. I promise. Declan nodded vigorously.
Yes.
I will end it. Right now. He pulled out his phone, opened the conversation with Morgan, and, yes, deleted the entire thread. The courtyard watched as he handed the phone to Noelle, the screen now clear of messages. He then pulled Morgan aside, quietly saying something she nodded to before walking away toward a side walkway. Mara rose to intercept her, arms open in support. All eyes now turned to Declan, who faced Noelle, voice barely above a whisper though audible in the hush. I love you, Noelle. I broke your trust, but I will spend every moment earning it back if you let me. Noelle's heart pounded. She could feel every eye on her, the weight of their collective expectations. She reached out and took Declan's hand. Silence reigned for a heartbeat, then a small ripple of applause. A few students nodded respectfully. The professor offered her a wordless nod of approval. Noelle drew a deep breath, then spoke to the gathering crowd. Thank you all for listening. This isn't a spectacle, it's a moment of truth. Let this stand as proof that honesty, no matter how painful, must prevail. If I find any more deception, I will not hesitate to walk away. But if Declan honors his promise, we'll move forward, stronger, together. She turned to Declan, eyes steady. I'm giving you one chance. Don't fail me again. He nodded, tears in his eyes. She embraced him briefly, then stepped back, gathering her binder. Mara guided Morgan away gently. The crowd slowly dispersed, some offering Noelle sympathetic smiles, others waving quietly as they passed. As Noelle and Declan packed up the equipment together, side by side, the tension between them had shifted, from accusation to fragile hope. They left the courtyard hand in hand, Noelle with the last word ringing in her ears. Truth, however hard, always finds its way into the light. Noelle flipped on the overhead light in their bedroom and stared at the thin stack of papers lying on the dresser. The divorce petition she had drafted in her mind for weeks now sat before her in neat, typed lines that felt both cold and final. She pressed her palm against the smooth surface, as if trying to slow her racing thoughts. Across the room, Declan sat on the edge of their unmade bed, shoulders slumped, hands clasped between his knees. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, grief, anger, hope, uncertainty, all vying for expression. She took a steadying breath and moved to stand in front of him, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "We need to decide, Declan," she said softly. His head lifted, eyes searching hers for a sign of whether this was yet another ploy to trap or a sincere invitation to rebuild. He exhaled, leaning back against the headboard. "I know," he replied. His voice was hoarse, but the words rang true. "I'm ready." For Noelle, ready had meant years of emotional turmoil. From the fevered hope of their early romance to the depths of betrayal when she discovered his messages with Morgan Vale. She remembered the shock of that murky evening in December, when the evidence played out on her laptop screen like a damning confession. The hurt had been searing, a white-hot brand across her heart. Yet here he was sitting beside her, waiting for a decision that could change both their lives forever. She reached for his hand. "I want to try, but only if you're absolutely committed," she said, feeling her pulse in her throat. Declan nodded, covering her hand with his. "I am. I'll do whatever it takes to earn back your trust." His promise trembled in the quiet room like an echo of their wedding vows, spoken under an arch of eucalyptus blossoms. She closed her eyes, recalling the promise they had made to stand by each other in sickness and health, in joy and sorrow. Now the sorrow had come. Could they still claim the joy? That night, they lay side by side on white linens, the glow of city lights filtering through the blinds. Noelle felt instead of her Declan's steady breathing, a reminder that he was still here. She thought of their unborn child, curled in her womb, blissfully unaware of the adult choices awaiting their parents. Was it better for their baby to grow up in a home where parents struggled to communicate, or to see the hard work of forgiveness and restoration in action? She turned to him and whispered, "I want us to go to therapy together. I want transparency, every day. No secrets. No side door conversations." He kissed her forehead. "Done," he promised. The following morning, sunlight slanted through their living room as Noelle sat at their dining table, laptop open before her. Across from her, Declan brewed coffee at the counter. She clicked through therapist profiles, noting practitioners who specialized in couples expecting their first child. She settled on Dr. Evelyn Perkins, whose clinic was a short drive away. Noelle drafted an email to schedule their first session, pausing at the final line. "We are both committed to rebuilding our marriage for ourselves and our baby." Once sent, she closed the laptop with a soft click, a small but significant act of progress. Over the next week, the couple attended their initial counseling session in a warmly lit office hung with abstract art. Dr. Perkins guided them through exercises to surface unspoken fears. Declan confessed to his loneliness on long trips, how he had sought comfort in messages he never intended to show Noelle. Noelle revealed her nighttime anxieties and the sense of violation she felt when she first uncovered the affair. Together, they drafted a transparency agreement, pledging to share calendars, set aside weekly check-in times, and enlist Mara Ortiz to serve as a mutual accountability partner when conflict felt overwhelming. Leaving the session, Noelle felt an unfamiliar sense of relief, like the first real breath drawn after holding it for too long. She slipped her hand into Declan's as they walked to the car. "That felt good," she said. He squeezed her hand. It did. Back at home, they turned to the practicalities that had long unsettled Noelle's mind: finances. She opened their joint banking app and sighed. They had pooled accounts at the start of the marriage, trusting that shared resources symbolized shared lives. But secrecy and betrayal had made those accounts feel like traps. With Declan's help, she drafted a new structure: a joint account for household bills, a separate account for her personal expenses, and a third family fund for baby-related needs, into which both would deposit a fixed percentage of every paycheck. They contacted a financial planner, Marina Lopez, who guided them through budgeting spreadsheets and emergency fund provisions. Marina's voice was steady as she explained the importance of individual autonomy within a partnership: shared wealth, shared goals, but individual security, too. By the end of the meeting, Declan had signed powers of attorney for their child's account, and Noelle smiled for the first time in weeks, feeling a measure of control reclaiming her life. Yet, as they put new protocols in place, setbacks surfaced. One evening, Declan returned late from the hospital where he volunteered twice a week delivering meals to new mothers. Noelle had worried because he had earlier limited her access to a schedule, citing the therapy agreement that he would only communicate changes via text. But she had not seen him confirm his service shift. Panic flared. Had old patterns reemerged? She called his phone from the car, her voice trembling. "Where are you?" The call went to voicemail. Her chest tightened. 15 anxious minutes later, a text arrived. "Sorry, I was covering an extra shift. Car malfunction apologies. On my way." Noelle braked on the Sunset Strip as tears welled. Was this lack of communication a relapse or simple chaos? The counselor's words echoed. We must distinguish genuine mistakes from careless repeats. She inhaled and replied, "Okay. Call me when you leave the hospital." Noelle realized trust would need more than rules. It needed grace. 2 weeks later, they celebrated a small victory. The nursery was painted a soft sage green. The crib assembled, and the first batch of tiny onesies hung on a mobile above the changing table. Declan had spent the afternoon drilling wooden dowels and alphabet blocks. Noelle watched him from the doorway, her heart warmed by his dedication. That evening, they took a short walk through their neighborhood, hand in hand, talking about baby names and dreams for their child. Each honest conversation, each chore shared, stitched a new layer onto their marriage. As the due date approached, they faced the final proving ground, the repeated financial contributions. One payday, Noelle noticed her bank balance was lower than expected. She texted Declan, "Did you cover any extra expenses this week?" He answered almost immediately, "Yes, I paid the plumbing bill at work, that emergency leak." It was legitimate, but the quick response and complete transparency soothed Noelle's lingering unease. She leaned back in her chair, realizing that she was calming not from the absence of conflict, but from the knowledge that they would communicate honestly. On the eve of her final prenatal appointment, Noelle stood in front of the mirror in their bathroom, brushing her hair. Declan appeared behind her, arms wrapped around her belly. He kissed her shoulder and whispered, "We've come so far." She closed her eyes, feeling the faint flutter inside, their baby's nighttime choreography. "Together," she replied. That night, they reviewed their pact of trust, a simple framed document by the crib. We speak our truths, however painful. We listen with open hearts. We protect our family's well-being. Underneath, their signatures glowed in black ink. They held hands over the frame, a final reaffirmation of the journey they had begun, from betrayal's brink back toward an embrace of vulnerability and hope. When labor finally approached 2 weeks later, they arrived at the hospital in the quiet hours before dawn as a true team. Noelle felt a surge of love for the man who had rebuilt his integrity in her sight. As she was wheeled into the delivery suite, Declan held her hand and recited the words they had practiced in therapy. "Breathe. We are here together." In each contraction, each shared breath, they honored their decision to reconcile. And when their daughter let out her first wail in the new day's light, Noelle's tears were not of sorrow but of wonder, for a love that had survived its greatest test and emerged ready to parent a new life together. The night our daughter was born, the world outside the hospital window was still and silent, as if holding its breath for her first cry. When that soft wail finally broke the hush, I felt every cell in my body ignite with a fierce, protective love I had never known possible. In that moment, the long, agonizing months of betrayal and doubt, those endless nights spent poring over messages and arguments, fell away like autumn leaves. All that mattered now was the tiny life in my arms, her skin warm and perfect, her eyelids fluttering in the glow of the overhead lamp. Declan knelt beside me, tears streaming down his face, and together we welcomed our daughter into the world we had fought so hard to save. The early days at home were a tangle of sleeplessness and wonder. Noelle Hawthorne, once an activist building schools in rural Colorado, now navigated the labyrinth of diaper changes and midnight feedings in our small Los Angeles bungalow. Each sunrise found us bleary-eyed yet grateful. Grateful that she had come through labor healthy, that Declan had been by my side when I doubted my strength, and that our marriage, frayed though it had been, still bore the promise of renewal. We established simple rituals, morning snuggles on a blanket spread across the living room floor, Declan singing lullabies he'd made up on the spot, and me tracing the curve of our daughter's cheek with reverent fingertips. In those moments, the slow work of healing unfolded organically, stitch by cautious stitch. As the weeks passed, our home filled with the soft coos of a growing infant and the steady hum of new routines. We'd promised each other transparency. And so Declan left his phone on the kitchen counter every evening, face up, unlocked. Together we sorted through the day's messages, work assignments, friendly banter with colleagues, occasional baby shop notifications. No secrets remained, no shadows lurking in the corners. I, in turn, shared my own anxieties, the fear that in giving so much of myself to this new life, I might lose the identity I had fought to reclaim. Declan listened attentively, offering words of reassurance and planning quiet afternoons just for us, free of social media and screens. By spring, when the jacarandas bloomed in pale lavender along the streets, we decided it was time for a fresh start. Denver had offered Declan a permanent position leading sustainable infrastructure projects. And though leaving Los Angeles felt both thrilling and terrifying, we sensed the move would cement our commitment to building a life together from the ground up. On a sunlit morning in June, we loaded our Chevy Suburban with boxes, crates of parenting books, framed therapy certificates, our daughter's tiny clothes folded with care, and set out for the Rockies. The drive north was a living tapestry, rolling hills dotted with wildflowers, peaks glinting under the sapphire sky. And the two of us swapping playlists and reminiscing about the moment we first met in that dusty Colorado valley. Settling into a small rental house in Boulder, we felt a surge of belonging. I reacquainted myself with the trails I had loved as a teenager, pushing our daughter in a jogging stroller along pine-shaded paths, her laughter echoing against mossy stones. Declan found camaraderie among his new team at the university's engineering department, his colleagues greeting him with warmth I had feared was lost to our past mistakes. Each evening, we gathered around our wooden dining table, birth gift from my parents, to share dinner, a simple farm-to-table meal, sometimes pasta with homemade pesto, sometimes pan-seared trout wrapped in parchment. The clatter of forks and the low murmur of conversation felt like milestones, proof that ordinary life, stitched with small blessings, could flourish anew. With day-tending responsibilities easing, I finally opened my long-cherished plan, a small bakery that would bring the flavors of our journey to the community. I named it Mountain Bloom, a tribute to the resilience of alpine flowers that push through snow. On grand opening day, the sign above the door, hand-painted by my childhood friend, shimmered in the morning sun. Inside, copper pots and wooden shelves held freshly baked croissants, honey-top scones, and a signature lavenderberry tart inspired by Boulder's fields. Declan manned the espresso machine in the corner, perfecting cortados and offering encouragement to nervous customers. Our daughter, now 8 months old, sat in a high chair near the window, reaching wide-eyed for crumbs and grinning at each passerby. Running the bakery was both exhilarating and exhausting. I juggled early mornings mixing dough with midday pickups for our daughter's daycare, parent and child house, where she took her first hesitant steps. Declan supported me relentlessly. He offered to interview substitute staff when my shifts grew long, and he coached me through social media hiccups when a weekend flood of customers crashed our website. We applied the same principles from counseling: clear communication, shared decision-making, and the freedom to ask for help without shame. Although the old scars of distrust sometimes whispered in the background, my fear that success would blind us to each other's needs, I pushed them aside with each triumphant sale. Each heartfelt compliment from a customer who swore our scones tasted like home. The real magic, however, was in the quiet moments that demanded no grand gestures. One evening, after closing time, Declan surprised me by painting a mural behind the bakery counter, a sunrise breaking over stylized mountain peaks, with delicate wildflowers crowding the foreground. It was a scene straight from my memories of Boulder's high country. Overwhelmed, I pressed my forehead against the cool wall, inhaling the fresh paint's tang and the promise it represented. Declan wrapped his arms around me. "This place," he said, "is as much yours as it is mine, and ours as a family." In that gesture, I tasted a stability more profound than any vow, a promise renewed through action rather than mere words. As our daughter approached her second birthday, we planned a family outing to Rocky Mountain National Park. 4 sets of footprints crisscrossed in the soft mud along Bear Lake Trail, hers tiny and halting, mine steady, and Declan's guiding each step. We paused together at the water's edge, where peaks reflected in still, sapphire depths. I glanced at Declan, memory of our first hike there flooding back. The ache of betrayal temporarily eclipsed by the abiding truth that love, once tested, could root even deeper. Our daughter giggled as she threw a pebble into the lake, tiny splashes rippling outwards, and I felt my own heart expand, forgiving us fully for the past. Through ups and downs, staff shortages at the bakery, unexpected plumbing bills, flares of anxiety in therapy sessions, we remained committed to our journey of restoration. We celebrated milestones with gratitude, a year without deception, 2 years since our daughter's birth, 500 days of consistent state of us check-ins. Each celebration, however small, marked a life rebuilt on honesty and shared dreaming. Our relationship, once frayed by secrecy, had become a living testament to the power of vulnerability and perseverance. In the quiet of late autumn, I found myself standing at our bakery window, watching flurries of snow begin to dance across Pearl Street. Mountain bloom glowed softly behind me, lantern light spilling onto the falling flakes. Declan joined me, his arm brushing my shoulder. We stood in companionable silence, 2 imperfect people who had chosen to remake themselves for each other, for our child, and for the future we craved. "We did it," he murmured. I turned to him and smiled, warm tear tracks on my cheeks. We did. When our daughter blew out 2 candles at her birthday party, surrounded by neighbors, friends, and my parents, no one cheered louder than Declan and me. But in the swirl of laughter and confetti, I felt an even deeper joy. The knowledge that this was not an ending but the continuation of a story defined not by betrayal, but by the courage to rebuild. We had reached the summit of our darkest hours and now stood on a plateau of possibility, ready for whatever peaks and valleys lay ahead. Life, I realized, was like baking. It required patience, precise ingredients, and the willingness to learn from each batch. Sometimes the dough rose unevenly, sometimes the oven burned too hot. But with every trial we adjusted the recipe a little, refining our craft until the result was something worth savoring. Looking at Declan and our little girl, I knew that our marriage, like our bakery, was a work in progress, a testament to the belief that even the most cracked foundations can give rise to beautiful things when met with honesty, dedication, and love that refuses to let go. And that brings us to the end of today's story on Truistory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.